Why is she always here? The thought hit Tara like a slap she didn't see coming. Hi guys, please subscribe to this channel to help it grow. She leaned against the doorway, coffee cup trembling in her hands, and watched Lila laugh at something Jason had said, that familiar crinkle at the corner of his eyes reserved only for people who mattered. Only now it wasn't her. It should have been ordinary, a friend visiting, a casual brunch, but the tightness in Tara's chest made it impossible to breathe through rationality. Something about the way Lila leaned in, the ease with which she filled the space Jason and Tara shared, made her stomach twist with a quiet fury she didn't recognize. Her mind raced, jumping from one possibility to the next. It's nothing. It's harmless. He wouldn't, but he might. That tiny word, might, felt heavier than any accusation she had ever whispered to herself. She forced herself to take a sip of coffee, hoping the warmth would calm the sudden panic, but the taste was bitter, burning at the edges of her tongue. Her eyes didn't leave them. Lila's hair caught the light in a way that made it glow like spun gold, and Jason's hand brushed hers, just barely, but enough to ignite a spark of unease in Tara's chest. She wanted to scream, to say something, anything, but the words lodged in her throat. This was a new kind of fear, one that didn't announce itself with loud drama, but crept in quietly, poisoning every corner of her day. Tara had trusted Jason completely, always. But now, every small gesture, every shared laugh, every glance felt loaded, and she couldn't shake the suspicion gnawing at her. How long had it been like this? How long had she been blind? She forced her mind away from the spiral, telling herself she was overreacting, that jealousy could be as dangerous as betrayal if left unchecked. And yet, the tightening in her chest refused to let go. Jason finally noticed her stare, tilting his head slightly with a soft smile that should have reassured her, but didn't. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. His voice was calm, familiar, the one that usually washed away any doubts, but Tara couldn't hear it. All she could hear was the laughter, the ease between him and Lila, and the silent accusation that hummed louder than words. "I'm fine," she said, forcing a smile, the words tasting metallic and hollow. She turned to set the coffee cup down, letting it clink against the counter, hoping the sound would anchor her in reality. But nothing anchored her anymore. For the first time in years, she felt like a stranger in her own life. Everything she had taken for granted, the love, the loyalty, the quiet certainty, was suddenly uncertain. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone, scrolling absent-mindedly, seeking distraction, seeking proof that her fears were unfounded. But every text, every notification seemed like a thread, pulling at the unraveling fabric of her peace. And then the thought came, unbidden and unwelcome. What if she was too late? She tried to convince herself that she was imagining things. Jason had been nothing but kind, patient, and devoted. He had shown her love in ways no one ever had. But the sight of him with Lila now, the way their shoulders brushed casually, the ease in their laughter, was like ice in her veins. It wasn't just proximity. It was the familiarity, the unspoken understanding between them that made Tara feel like an intruder in her own relationship. She wanted to leave, to run to the safety of her apartment and lock the door behind her. But something held her in place. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the need to see for herself how deep the connection went. Her chest tightened as she watched Jason lean closer, his hand resting lightly against Lila's back. Tara's mind raced with every scenario she could imagine, and with each one, her heart sank a little further. She knew she shouldn't jump to conclusions. She knew it was unfair to read meaning into simple gestures. Yet, she couldn't stop. She remembered the first time she'd met Lila. It had been at a casual dinner Jason had organized for his friends. Lila had seemed harmless enough, charming, witty, easy to like, but there had been something in the way Jason had looked at her that Tara couldn't forget. There had been a spark of recognition, a warmth reserved for someone he trusted implicitly. Back then, Tara had shrugged it off, thinking she was being paranoid. But now, months later, the unease she had ignored was roaring in her chest like a storm she couldn't control. Tara set down her coffee and leaned against the counter, trying to steady herself. Her eyes never left them, tracing every laugh, every gesture, every glance. She noticed the small things, the way Lila tilted her head when Jason spoke, the casual way she rested her hand on his arm, the way he seemed to lean just a fraction closer. None of it was overt. None of it was enough to accuse anyone of betrayal. But together, it painted a picture Tara couldn't ignore. Her stomach churned, a mix of fear, jealousy, and a pang of something darker she refused to name. Jason turned toward her, sensing her scrutiny. "You've been quiet all morning," he said softly, concern knitting his brows. His voice should have comforted her, but instead it amplified her anxiety. She wanted to tell him everything, to demand answers, but the words felt heavy, dangerous. If she said the wrong thing, if she accused him unfairly, she could destroy what they had. And yet, staying silent was unbearable too. "I'm fine," she replied, forcing a smile that felt brittle even to her own eyes. She took a slow breath, willing herself to stay calm, to convince herself that she was overreacting. But deep down, she knew the truth. She wasn't overreacting. She was seeing things clearly, and clarity was frightening. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Tara tried to focus on her work, but every sound, every movement around her seemed amplified. She noticed the subtle ways Jason and Lila interacted, the inside jokes, the casual touches, the way he looked at her friend with something in his eyes he rarely reserved for anyone else. Each small detail stacked on the last, building a wall between her and the calm she had once felt. By lunchtime, she was restless, jittery, and every attempt to reassure herself failed. Her phone buzzed on the table, and she jumped, her heart racing. It was Jason. She unlocked it with a shaky hand, expecting perhaps a casual message, a simple note of affection. Instead, it was a picture, a memory from months ago, he and Lila at some event, smiling, leaning close as friends often do. He had sent it with a text. "Remember this night? We had such a great time." Tara stared at the image, her stomach sinking. There was nothing inappropriate in it, nothing that proved betrayal, but the thoughtless intimacy of the moment, captured, preserved, shared, cut her more than she expected. She realized that what she felt wasn't about proof. It was about proximity, about the feeling that she was losing ground in the emotional landscape she had always thought belonged solely to her and Jason. She wanted to confront him, to demand reassurance, to claim her place, but fear held her back. What if she overreacted? What if she destroyed the trust they had built? And yet, as she scrolled through the photo again, tracing the curve of Lila's smile, the tilt of Jason's shoulder, she understood something she had tried to ignore. This wasn't paranoia. Something was shifting. Something had changed. That night, Tara couldn't sleep. She lay awake, eyes open to the darkness, mind racing through every interaction, every laugh, every fleeting touch. She replayed the moments over and over, searching for clues, for meaning, for reassurance she knew she might never get. And then she realized, with a sudden, sinking clarity, that the calm she had always known was gone. The love she had trusted implicitly was now entangled with questions she couldn't answer and suspicions she couldn't silence. She thought about Jason, about the man she loved so deeply. She wanted to believe in him, to trust that nothing untoward had happened, that the bond he shared with Lila was nothing more than friendship. But she also realized that love wasn't enough to make uncertainty disappear. Trust, once shaken, demanded proof, and Tara didn't know if she could find it without tearing everything apart. Morning came again, gray and quiet, sunlight filtering through the blinds in thin, fragile lines. Tara sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, staring blankly at the cup as if it held the answer she sought. Jason entered, smiling softly, unaware of the storm brewing behind her eyes. And Tara, for the first time in years, felt the weight of doubt pressing down on her chest, a tension she couldn't ignore. The game had begun, subtle but ruthless, and she knew instinctively that nothing would ever be the same again. The first act of their story, the act of quiet suspicion, of small unease building into something larger, had begun. And Tara understood, with a clarity that both frightened and galvanized her, that love alone would not protect her from what was coming. Tara didn't sleep that night. The shadows in her apartment seemed heavier than usual, pressing in against the walls, wrapping around her chest with invisible fingers that squeezed just enough to make her restless. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the floorboards, the soft whoosh of the wind brushing against the window. She had tried to convince herself it was all in her head, that she was reading too much into simple gestures, but the memory of Lila's laugh with Jason, the tilt of her head, the way she leaned in just enough to brush his shoulder, replayed relentlessly, refusing to be dismissed. By morning, the unease had settled into a kind of sharp awareness. She couldn't focus on her work, couldn't eat her breakfast properly, and even the sunlight filtering through the blinds seemed intrusive, illuminating the small cracks in her carefully maintained composure. She told herself she would confront Jason today, that she needed answers, but deep down she feared what those answers might reveal. And yet, she knew she couldn't stay silent forever. The tension was like a knot in her chest that only confrontation might untangle. She found Jason in the kitchen, making his usual cup of coffee with that calm, measured patience that had always been his way of grounding her. He didn't notice her staring at him at first, humming softly under his breath, the faint curl of his smile lighting up his face in a way that usually made her heart soften. But today, that same expression felt like a wall she couldn't scale. The warmth was there, yes, but it was also distant, unreachable, as though something or someone had intruded into the space she thought was theirs alone. "Morning," he said finally, turning toward her with a casual ease that made her stomach twist. "Sleep okay?" Tara shook her head, forcing a laugh she didn't feel. "Not really. I just had a rough night." She didn't elaborate, couldn't. Words felt inadequate for the storm swirling inside her. Jason tilted his head, concern flickering in his eyes. "Want to talk about it?" She hesitated, her mind racing. Could she trust herself not to sound paranoid? Could she ask the questions that burned on her tongue without it sounding like an accusation? "Maybe later," she said finally, swallowing hard, forcing a smile that probably didn't reach her eyes. "I just need some coffee first." He nodded, pouring the liquid into his cup with careful precision, seemingly unaware of the tension that hung in the air like a tangible fog. Tara sipped hers quietly, trying to ground herself, trying to convince herself that today would be ordinary, that maybe, just maybe, she was imagining things. But the ordinary didn't last. It never did when Lila was involved. It started with a text. Jason's phone buzzed on the counter, a subtle vibration that drew Tara's attention immediately. She told herself not to look, not to invade his privacy, but her eyes betrayed her curiosity. The screen lit up with a message from Lila. No words, just a smiling emoji. Jason glanced at it, and something flickered across his expression that made Tara's stomach lurch. A pause, a faint smile that seemed both private and intimate, and then he typed back quickly, his fingers moving over the screen with ease. Tara's chest tightened. It wasn't that he had done anything wrong, at least, not yet, but the familiarity, the ease with which they communicated, was what cut her the deepest. It was invisible, intangible, yet it pressed against her heart like a weight she couldn't lift. By mid-morning, she could no longer focus on her work. Every word she typed felt hollow. Every phone call she took was a blur of noise she barely registered. Her mind kept returning to the brunch yesterday, to the way Lila had looked at him, to the tilt of her shoulder, to the laugh that seemed to belong to a world Tara wasn't allowed into. She wanted to confront him now, to demand answers, but the fear of what she might find kept her rooted in indecision. When lunch came, Jason suggested they meet Lila and a few friends for a casual outing at a cafe near the river. Tara froze at the suggestion, a mixture of dread and disbelief washing over her. "I don't know," she started, trying to sound casual, but her voice faltered. Jason reached across the table, touching her hand lightly. "It's fine if you don't want to. I just thought it'd be nice." No pressure. His eyes met hers with that gentle insistence that usually melted her defenses, and she nodded, forcing herself to agree. The cafe was crowded but not noisy, warm sunlight spilling across the tables, the smell of roasted coffee beans and baked goods mingling in the air. Tara tried to settle into the space, to enjoy the morning, but the tension never left her chest. And then Lila arrived, as radiant as ever, sliding into the booth with a grin that made Jason's eyes light up in a way Tara had only ever reserved for herself. "Hey guys," Lila said, her voice melodic, carrying effortlessly over the soft chatter of the cafe. She leaned toward Jason, brushing her hair behind her ear, and he laughed, that easy laugh that made Tara's stomach sink. The conversation began casually, light jokes and shared memories flowing like a stream, but every detail felt like a reminder to Tara. She was on the outside of something she had once thought belonged entirely to her. Tara forced herself to smile, to laugh at the jokes, to insert herself into the conversation where she could. But she felt like a spectator, watching Jason and Lila inhabit a world that had no room for her. Every glance they shared, every inside joke, every brush of a hand was a silent accusation, a reminder that her place in his life was no longer uncontested. By the time dessert arrived, Tara's patience was fraying. She excused herself to the restroom, needing space to think, to breathe, to convince herself that her fears were unfounded. She splashed cold water on her face, trying to wash away the anxiety that clung stubbornly, and stared at her reflection. Her eyes betrayed her, wide and uncertain, reflecting the storm she felt but refused to name aloud. When she returned, she caught a glimpse of Jason and Lila laughing, heads close together, sharing some secret moment she wasn't part of. Tara's chest tightened in a way that made it hard to breathe. She wanted to leave, to escape the suffocating closeness, but she couldn't. Not yet. She had to see, had to understand, had to know what was happening between them. By the time they walked back into the sunlight, the tension had settled into a dull ache, a persistent reminder that things were shifting. Jason linked his arm with hers, smiling softly, and Tara forced herself to meet his gaze. She wanted to trust him, to believe that nothing had changed. But the truth was written in the small, invisible gestures she could no longer ignore. The laughter, the touches, the ease with which Lila filled the space between them. It was undeniable, and it left Tara standing on the edge of uncertainty, unsure how to reclaim the ground she thought was hers. The walk home was quiet. Jason chatted about trivial things, about work, about errands, but Tara barely heard him. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying every glance, every laugh, every moment she hadn't noticed before. By the time they reached their apartment, the tension between them was almost tangible, a silent chasm stretching wider with every heartbeat. Inside, Jason tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled back slightly. He noticed his brow furrowing. "Tara, what's wrong?" I need some time," she said quietly, retreating to her bedroom. Her voice was calm, but her mind was anything but. She knew something had shifted irreversibly, that the delicate balance of trust and love she had relied on was now fractured, and that the presence of Lila, something she had once dismissed as harmless, was now an unavoidable, consuming force. Tara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of her thoughts. Fear, jealousy, and heartbreak swirled together, indistinguishable, leaving her exhausted and trembling. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or what the days after that might hold, but she understood one thing with absolute clarity: nothing would ever feel the same again. The quiet tension of suspicion had become a storm, and there was no going back to the way things were before Lila had stepped into their lives. And for the first time, Tara realized that love, as strong and as true as it might be, could be tested in ways she had never imagined, and that sometimes the hardest battles were fought not against enemies outside, but against the invisible, suffocating shadows within the life you thought was yours alone. The next morning, Tara woke with a dull ache pressing against her chest, the remnants of last night's anxiety clinging to her like a second skin. The city outside her window was beginning its usual hum, indifferent to the turmoil she felt inside. She lay in bed for a long moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince herself that she was overreacting, that maybe Lila was just harmless. But the memory of yesterday's cafe outing refused to fade. Every laugh, every glance, every brush of shoulder replayed vividly, a persistent echo in her mind that refused to be silenced. She got dressed slowly, choosing something simple, unremarkable, clothes that would let her blend into the background, if only to avoid Lila's presence today. Her heart raced with anticipation she didn't want to admit. She had to see Jason, had to speak to him, but the thought of confronting him made her stomach twist in ways that were almost physical, a coil of fear and fury she couldn't ignore. The truth was simple, terrifying in its clarity. She was losing control over her own heart. By the time she arrived at Jason's apartment, she was shaking just slightly, a tremor she told herself was from the cold morning air. She found him in the kitchen again, his familiar calm a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. He was humming under his breath, the kind of effortless melody that once soothed her, now a reminder of the intimacy he shared so freely with Lila. "Morning," Jason said, glancing up with a smile that used to make her feel safe. Today, it felt like a mask, a carefully constructed barrier between him and something she didn't yet understand. "Sleep okay?" Tara forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Fine," she said, and it was a lie she barely recognized as her own. "Just thinking." Jason frowned, concern flickering across his face. "You've been distant. Something's bothering you. Talk to me, please." She wanted to desperately. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to pull the truth out of him by any means necessary. But fear held her tongue. What if she was wrong? What if her suspicion was paranoia disguised as reality? And yet, every nerve in her body screamed that she couldn't remain silent any longer. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Jason frowned and stepped toward it, opening the door to reveal Lila, radiant as always, carrying a small bag with what Tara guessed were snacks or gifts. "Hey," Lila greeted warmly, her voice bright, melodic, perfectly casual, perfectly comfortable. "Thought I'd drop by. Jason said I could come by this morning, right?" Tara's stomach sank. She didn't want to watch, didn't want to be part of this, yet her feet refused to move. She remained in the kitchen, an observer trapped in her own home. Jason's face lit up, his posture shifting subtly as he greeted her friend. Lila leaned in slightly, brushing her hand lightly against his arm, and Tara felt a sudden rush of heat to her face, a mixture of embarrassment, fury, and fear. They moved to the living room, laughter filling the space in a way that should have been comforting, should have felt like home, but instead it felt like an intrusion, a claim on a territory she had always considered hers. Tara sank onto the couch, her arms folded across her chest, watching them with a tight jaw and a heart that pounded painfully in her ears. She tried to focus on the small, ordinary details of their conversation. The weather, the trivial jokes, the way Lila mentioned a shared memory from work. But each word, each gesture, each laugh was a reminder of the closeness she could no longer deny. After a while, Jason excused himself to make coffee, leaving Tara and Lila alone for a brief moment. Lila turned to her, her smile still bright, but with a subtle edge that Tara couldn't ignore. "Hey, you okay?" she asked casually, but there was something in her tone that sounded aware. Knowing, Tara felt a flicker of alarm, the first real, prickling sense that maybe Lila understood the tension better than she should. "I'm fine," Tara said tightly, forcing a smile. "Really?" Lila tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing just a fraction. "You don't look fine," she said softly. "It's okay. You don't have to pretend." The words hit Tara harder than she expected. Lila wasn't just acknowledging her presence. She was testing her, probing the edges of her patience, and Tara realized, with sudden clarity, that this wasn't going to be simple. This wasn't just jealousy or insecurity. Lila was a force deliberate and calculated, whether consciously or unconsciously, and Tara's first instinct, to retreat, was being challenged. Jason returned with coffee in hand, oblivious to the tension that had thickened in his absence. He handed Tara a mug, their fingers brushing lightly, a gesture meant to reassure, meant to bridge the distance. But it fell flat, meaningless against the backdrop of what Tara was beginning to understand. He sat down, glancing between the two of them, a small smile playing at his lips. "You two getting along?" Lila laughed softly, leaning just slightly closer to him. "Of course. Tara and I are practically best friends already." The words should have sounded friendly, casual, innocent, but Tara couldn't hear them that way. They were sharp, precise, cutting into the fragile sense of security she had left. The morning stretched on, each minute a careful study of gestures and words, of laughter and glances. Tara felt trapped in a reality she hadn't chosen, a reality where every movement was loaded, every smile double-edged. She tried to remind herself of what she knew. Jason loved her, he had chosen her, and Lila was just a friend. But the knowledge offered no comfort. By midday, Tara had reached a breaking point. She excused herself, claiming she had errands to run, though in reality she needed space, needed air, needed distance from the suffocating intimacy she had witnessed. As she stepped outside, the sunlight was harsh, almost too bright, forcing her to squint, to focus on the small details of the city street, to ground herself in something real. Her chest heaved as she drew in deep breaths, willing herself to stay calm. But the image of Lila leaning against Jason, smiling in a way that should have belonged only to her, refused to leave. Back in her apartment, she sank onto the edge of her bed, the weight of realization pressing down. This wasn't just about a laugh or a brush of a hand. This was about proximity, about intimacy, about the quiet ways that people can slip into your life and claim pieces of your heart without overtly asking for them. And Tara knew, with a painful clarity, that this was only the beginning. Lila wasn't going anywhere, Jason's affection wasn't guaranteed, and her own patience was fraying at the edges. She picked up her phone, scrolling through messages from Jason, rereading old texts, searching for reassurance she wasn't sure existed. And somewhere between the carefully constructed words and the everyday details, she saw it, the pattern she had ignored, dismissed, rationalized away. Jason and Lila had history, depth, a connection that ran beneath the surface of casual friendship. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but Tara saw it, and it left a bitter taste in her mouth. Her hand shook as she set the phone down. The first act of quiet suspicion had ended with a tension she couldn't ignore. The second act, this one, full of realization, observation, and small confrontations, had begun. Tara understood, with a sharp, aching clarity, that the simple life she had trusted, the love she had believed was unshakable, was now being tested in ways she had never imagined. And she knew, with certainty, that the storm between her, Jason, and Lila was only growing stronger. The question, now, was simple. What would she do when the storm broke? Tara didn't wait another morning to act. The tight knot her chest had grown unbearable, twisting with every thought of Jason and Lila together, laughing, sharing space in ways that should have been hers alone. She had spent the night pacing, replaying scenes, analyzing texts, every word and glance. And now, she knew she had to confront them. She couldn't let the fear and suspicion eat her alive in silence. She arrived at Jason's apartment earlier than usual, telling herself it was coincidence, that it was timing, that any ordinary explanation existed, but inside, her pulse throbbed with the adrenaline of confrontation. Her hands were clammy as she knocked, the sound sharp against the door, announcing her arrival like a warning. Jason opened the door almost immediately, smiling as though everything were normal. "Hey, you're early," he said. But Tara saw it in his eyes, the flicker of curiosity, the subtle tension that told her he sensed something was off. "I need to talk to you," she said immediately, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her voice was calm, measured, but there was an undercurrent of steel she couldn't hide. Jason's smile faltered slightly, and he gestured for her sit. "What's going on?" Tara didn't sit. Instead, she let her gaze drift toward the living room, and there she saw Lila, casually perched on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. The light from the window caught her hair, making it glow in a way that seemed designed to mock Tara's tension. She felt the tightness in her chest grow sharper. "Lila," she said quietly, her voice steady but low, carrying a weight that made the other girl look up. "We need to talk." Lila tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly, as if measuring the storm in Tara's expression. "Oh," she said, innocently casual, though Tara could see the spark of awareness behind her smile. "About what?" Tara's jaw tightened. "About you. About us. About him." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the tension she had held in for weeks. Lila's eyebrows rose in a deliberate, teasing way, and Jason's expression shifted between surprise and worry. "Hey, what's this about?" Jason asked, stepping closer. His hand brushed Tara's arm lightly, a gesture meant to reassure, but it only made her more determined. "It's about the way you two act around each other," she said, finally letting the words she had been holding and spill out. "The laughing, the inside jokes, the way you touch each other. It's not normal friendship. And I'm done pretending it is." Her eyes flared, fierce and unrelenting. "I see it, Jason. I see what's happening, and I won't be blind anymore." Lila's laugh was soft, teasing, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Tara, you're overreacting," she said lightly, shrugging as if the weight of Tara's accusation was nothing. "Jason and I are just friends. Really, just friends." Tara's voice rose, trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "You lean in too close, you laugh too much, you act like you own a piece of him that isn't yours. And I'm tired of pretending I don't notice." Jason stepped forward, trying to place a hand on her shoulder. "Tara, calm down. You're letting your imagination run wild. Lila's just a friend. I promise you, nothing more." But Tara didn't step back. The knot in her chest had grown into a fire she couldn't control. "Nothing more," she repeated, voice sharp. "Then why is it that every time you're together, I feel like I'm losing him? Why is it that I can't stand being in the same room without my chest tightening?" Her eyes met his, searching for the reassurance that used to be absolute. "Tell me, Jason. Tell me it's nothing. Tell me that she's not taking you from me." Lila tilted her head again, her expression unreadable. "Tara, you really think I'm trying to take him?" she asked softly, almost mockingly. "I'm not. I don't want him. I like him, sure, but he's yours. He's always been yours." Tara blinked, unsure if she believed her. Her mind screamed that the words were hollow, that the ease between them was impossible to ignore. She looked at Jason, searching for the truth in his eyes, but his expression was calm, conflicted, loving, and maddeningly frustrating. "See?" Lila said, catching her hesitation. "Nothing's happening. You're imagining things." "Am I?" Tara snapped, her voice rising despite herself. "Am I imagining the way you lean on him like he's yours? The way you laugh at his jokes the way I used to? Am I imagining how comfortable you are around him? How close you get?" Her chest heaved. "I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend it's okay." Jason stepped closer, voice gentle but firm. "Tara, please. I love you. You have to trust me. Lila is my friend, yes, but she's not." "She's not what?" Tara cut him off, fury and pain colliding in a storm she couldn't control. "Not someone you'd choose over me, or not someone who already has." Her voice cracked, "because it feels like she's already here in everything between us. I don't know where I end and where she begins anymore." Lila's face softened slightly, her teasing edge gone for the first time. "Tara, you're letting fear make you see things differently. Jason loves you. He always has. Nothing I do can change that." But Tara shook her head, tears welling up. "It's not just about what you do. It's about what's happening when I'm not looking, when I don't notice. It's about the space you occupy in his life, the intimacy you share that isn't mine. And I can't compete with that." Jason's hand hovered between them, uncertain. His voice was low, careful. "Tara, I can't control your feelings, but you have to believe me. You're the one I love. Always. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him completely, to feel the calm she once did. But trust, once shaken, demanded proof, and she couldn't find it in gestures and words alone. Not yet. For a long moment, silence hung between the three of them. The tension was thick, palpable, a storm waiting to break. Tara's chest heaved, her mind spinning, heart pounding with the force of unspoken fears. And she realized, with sharp clarity, that this confrontation, this first emotional collision, was only the beginning. There would be more. Harder. More direct. More painful. She stepped back, distancing herself from both of them, letting the cool air of reality hit her. I need space, she said finally, voice low but firm. I need to think about what this means, about what I can live with. Jason's hand reached for hers again, hesitating. Tara, no, she said firmly, stepping away. Not yet. She left the apartment with a sense of both relief and terror. Relief, because she had voiced what had been building inside her. Terror, because she knew the path ahead was uncertain, fragile, and potentially devastating. The confrontation hadn't solved anything. It had only illuminated the fractures that already existed, the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface for months. As she walked down the street, the city's morning noise faded into a distant hum. Her thoughts raced, bouncing between Jason and Lila, the moments she had observed, the gestures she had ignored, the words she had heard, and the ones she wished she could demand. She realized that the next steps would be crucial. The way she chose to confront, to respond, to reclaim her sense of security and love would determine not only the future of her relationship, but the integrity of her own heart. By the time she reached her apartment, Tara knew one thing with certainty. The second act of this invisible play, the act of quiet observation, subtle provocation, and emotional awakening, was over. The third act, the act of confrontation, had begun. And in that act, no one would leave unchanged. The following days were unbearable for Tara. The apartment, once a sanctuary filled with soft laughter and familiar warmth, now felt like a cage. Every time she caught Jason's glance, every small gesture or smile, it felt magnified, loaded with the weight of suspicion and unspoken tension. She had confronted him, demanded clarity, voiced the storm that had been building inside her, and yet nothing had changed, not really. His words of reassurance lingered in her mind, but the ease he shared with Lila seemed untouched, untouchable, as if nothing had ever happened. Tara tried to keep herself busy, throwing herself into work, errands, anything that could distract her from the quiet terror gnawing at her chest. But distractions were fleeting. The thought of them together, of the way Lila effortlessly filled spaces Tara once thought were hers alone, kept her restless. Her sleep was shallow, punctuated by dreams where she imagined Lila leaning closer to Jason, whispering things meant only for him, her laughter ringing in Tara's ears like an accusation. And then it happened. What Tara had feared, yet knew was inevitable. Jason invited Lila over one evening, under the guise of casual company, a simple dinner to catch up. Tara's chest tightened when he mentioned it. She tried to remain calm, to convince herself that it was harmless, that there was nothing to fear, but the anxiety in her stomach was relentless. That night, Tara arrived home early from work, telling herself she would stay, observe, and finally gather the proof she needed. Proof that would either confirm her suspicions or lay them to rest. She found the apartment quieter than usual, a strange calm settling over the space, as if it too knew what was coming. Jason was in the kitchen, casually chopping vegetables, his expression neutral, serene almost. "Hey," he greeted, glancing up. "You're home early." "I wanted to," Tara said softly, her voice tight, restrained. She stepped further inside, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "Dinner soon?" He smiled, a gentle curve that should have eased her tension, but didn't. "Yeah, she'll be here any minute. Don't worry." The words were simple, ordinary, but Tara felt them like a challenge. Don't worry. How could she not? She didn't trust the casual rhythm of his reassurance anymore, not after everything she had observed. When Lila arrived, Tara was already seated on the couch, heart pounding in her chest, hands gripping the fabric of her dress so tightly she feared it might tear. Lila walked in, radiant and confident, holding a bottle of wine as if it were a weapon. "Hey," she said brightly, setting it down. Her eyes flicked toward Tara with a knowing smile. And for a moment, Tara felt exposed, raw, like Lila could see every doubt and fear she had kept hidden. Dinner began. Conversation was light, laughter soft, almost polite, but beneath the surface, every glance, every gesture, every touch was a loaded signal. Tara watched Jason as he served Lila first, his hand brushing hers just slightly, the intimacy of the movement enough to make Tara's stomach twist. Every detail seemed amplified, every word heavier than it had any right to be. And then it happened, a moment so small, yet so revealing, that Tara felt her chest collapse inward. Lila, reaching for a glass of wine, brushed her fingers against Jason's hand. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone else, but to Tara, it was like a knife. Her mind raced, imagining the worst, seeing betrayal in every casual touch, every shared smile, every laugh that wasn't hers. She couldn't hold back anymore. "Stop," she said suddenly, her voice sharper than she intended. Both Jason and Lila looked up, startled. Tara's heart was pounding, her hands trembling as she rose to her feet. "Stop pretending this is normal. Stop pretending you're just friends." Lila blinked, taken aback, but her smile didn't falter. "Tara, calm down. You're overreacting." "Am I?" Tara snapped, stepping closer. "Because I see it. Every single moment. The way you lean in, the way you laugh, the way he looks at you. It's too much. You know it's too much." Jason placed a hand gently on her arm, trying to calm her, but she shook him off. "Don't touch me," she said, voice rising with a mixture of fear and fury. "Not until this is over. Not until I know the truth." The apartment felt smaller, the air thick with tension, each heartbeat echoing in Tara's ears like a drum of accusation. Lila's expression shifted, the teasing edge gone, replaced with a calculated calm that unnerved Tara even further. "Tara," she said softly, almost soothingly, "you have to understand something. Jason isn't yours to control. He's not. He's his own person. And the closeness we share, it's nothing. It's just friendship. I promise you." Tara's laugh was hollow, bitter. "Friendship?" she repeated, voice shaking. "Friendship doesn't make your stomach twist, doesn't make your chest feel like it's being crushed, doesn't make every laugh a reminder that you're not enough. Friendship doesn't feel like a threat to your entire world." Jason's eyes softened, filled with concern and helplessness. "Tara, I love you," he said again, quietly, as though repeating it would make her understand. "I've never loved anyone the way I love you. Nothing is happening with Lila. She's just my friend." But Tara couldn't hear it. She couldn't trust it. Not after months of small moments, small gestures, small glances that had built into a mountain of doubt she couldn't ignore. Her hand shook as she gripped the edge of the table, her chest heaving. "I want proof," she said, voice low, almost a whisper, yet sharp enough to cut through the room. "I want proof that she isn't taking you from me. I need to see it. I need to feel it." Lila's eyes flickered, a spark of something unreadable passing over her face, but she remained calm. "You already have it," she said quietly. "He's yours. He's always been yours. But if you don't believe me, that's your choice." Tara's breath caught in her throat. The words sounded reasonable, almost comforting, but the calmness, the confidence in Lila's voice made her uneasy. It was the first time she realized that this wasn't just about Jason and Lila. It was about her too. Her insecurity, her fear, her inability to fully trust had given power to the one she feared the most. She sank in her chair, her mind spinning. The confrontation hadn't solved anything. It had only illuminated the depth of her own vulnerability. And yet, for the first time, Tara understood something crucial. If she wanted to protect what she had, if she wanted to reclaim her love, she couldn't do it with fear. She had to confront it, face it, and take control, not of Jason or Lila, but of herself. The evening ended in tense silence, Lila leaving shortly after dinner with a polite goodbye that felt like a challenge. Jason stayed behind, trying to bridge the distance Tara had created, but she remained still, quiet, eyes distant. She had seen enough, heard enough, felt enough to know that the real battle wasn't outside. It was inside her. And as she sat alone later that night, the city lights flickering through her window, Tara made a silent vow. She wouldn't let fear dictate her love. She would fight, in her own way, to reclaim what was hers. Not by suspicion, not by accusations, but by understanding, by strength, and by facing the truth head-on. The confrontation had been harsh, painful, and revealing, but it had also illuminated the path forward. Tara knew that the story between her, Jason, and Lila was far from over. The next moves, the choices she made, would define not only her relationship, but the woman she was becoming in the process. And deep down, despite the pain, the tension, and the uncertainty, she felt a spark of determination, a fire that refused to be extinguished by fear. She would not break. She would not falter. And above all, she would not let Lila or doubt take what belonged to her. The next morning, Tara woke to a silence she couldn't recognize. Jason had already left for work, the apartment empty except for the lingering scent of Lila's perfume from last night. It wasn't just any scent. It was a subtle, sweet reminder of presence, of closeness, of the intimacy Tara felt threatened by. She inhaled sharply, trying to ground herself, but her chest ached with the weight of her own thoughts. She couldn't stop replaying the confrontation from the night before. The sharp words, the accusations, the uneasy calm Lila had maintained. That calm had unnerved her more than any outburst. Tara paced the apartment, running her hands through her hair, trying to think. She knew the tension with Jason and Lila was far from resolved. But she also realized that if she wanted answers, if she wanted to reclaim her peace, she had to do something more than confrontations and accusations. She had to observe, to understand, and, most importantly, she had to protect herself. By mid-morning, Tara decided she needed perspective. She called her closest friend, someone who knew her deeply and could see the storm she had been navigating. "I need your help," she admitted, voice tight, almost breaking. "I don't know if I'm imagining things or if I'm just overreacting, but I can't stop thinking about them, about him, about Lila." Her friend listened patiently, offering a steady voice amidst her chaos. "You're not overreacting, Tara. You've seen things, felt things that are real. You just need clarity and maybe a way to take control without letting fear control you." Tara took a deep breath. That was exactly what she needed to regain control. She couldn't stop Jason's friendship with Lila, nor could she prevent their interactions, but she could control how she responded. She could choose strength over suspicion, clarity over anxiety. That evening, Jason returned home. Tara had prepared herself, ready to speak again, but in a different way, calm, direct, and focused on truth rather than fear. She met him at the door, her expression unreadable. "Jason, we need to talk," she said, voice steady, the fire from the confrontation still simmering beneath her skin. He nodded, sensing the difference in her tone. "Of course," he said softly, leading her to the living room. "I want to understand what's going on, Tara. I really do." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I need honesty," she said. "Complete honesty. I need you to tell me everything. Your interactions with Lila, the way you feel about her, the history between you two. I need to know, without half-truths, without excuses." Jason hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Okay," he said. "I'll tell you everything." He began slowly, explaining how he and Lila had been friends long before he met Tara. He recounted shared work projects, inside jokes, past hardships. They had leaned on each other in ways that built a strong friendship. Tara listened quietly, absorbing every word, feeling a mixture of relief and pain. Relief because Jason had been truthful, pain because the depth of their connection was undeniable, the kind of bond that naturally made her insecure. "And now?" Tara asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Where do you stand with her? Jason's eyes softened. I stand with you, Tara. I love you, and that hasn't changed. Lila is important to me, yes, but only as a friend. Nothing else. I don't have feelings for her that cross the line. I don't want anything that isn't ours. You're my partner, my love, my future. That's all that matters. For a moment, Tara wanted to believe him, to let the tension dissolve. But there was still a shadow lingering, a doubt she couldn't shake. Then why does it feel like she's everywhere? Like she's in every space I share with you? Like I'm competing for something I shouldn't even be. Jason reached for her hand, holding it firmly. Because she's close to me in ways that used to be mine alone, he admitted softly. But that doesn't make her a threat. It makes her a friend I care about. But you're the one I choose every day, Tara. You have to trust that. Tara's chest ached as she considered his words. Trust. It wasn't about proof or observation. It was about belief, about letting go of fear and insecurity. And yet, she knew that wasn't simple. Not after everything. That night, Tara lay in bed, thinking. The confrontation had been necessary. It had laid bare the truths and the fears, but it had also illuminated her own vulnerability. The fire in her chest had shifted slightly. It was no longer just anger and suspicion. It was determination, tempered with clarity. She wouldn't let fear dictate her love. She wouldn't let doubts control her. But she also wouldn't ignore the lessons she had learned. Intimacy, even in its smallest forms, could wound as deeply as betrayal if not recognized and managed. The days that followed were a delicate dance. Jason remained patient, attentive, his actions consistent with his words. Lila's presence was no less frequent, but Tara approached it differently. She observed, yes, but without letting fear control her. She spoke directly when something bothered her, demanded honesty when she needed reassurance, and slowly, imperceptibly, the tension began to shift. Then came the pivotal moment. Tara returned home from work one evening to find Lila waiting in the living room, a cup of tea in hand. Jason was away, and the air was thick with a strange, almost theatrical calm. Tara's chest tightened instinctively, but she squared her shoulders, refusing to let panic or suspicion dictate her response. Hi, Tara, Lila said softly, smiling in a way that was both innocent and provocative. Jason's out. Thought I'd drop by for a quick chat. Tara's gaze was unwavering. Why? She asked simply, her voice calm but firm. Lila hesitated, then smiled faintly. Because I wanted to clear the air. Between us. Tara raised an eyebrow. Between us. Yes, Lila said. I can see the tension. I can see how you feel. And I want you to know, I don't want him, Tara. I don't want to interfere with what you two have. I respect your relationship. Tara studied her for a long moment, weighing her sincerity. The room was silent, heavy with possibility. For the first time, she realized that Lila's presence wasn't inherently destructive. It was the fear of losing control that had made it so. She didn't have to compete with Lila. She didn't have to battle her. She only had to trust and, more importantly, trust herself. That night, when Jason returned, Tara felt a shift inside her. The confrontation had revealed not only truths, but her own resilience, her capacity to face fears head-on. She understood that love wasn't only about passion or closeness. It was about boundaries, honesty, and the courage to confront what hurts. And for the first time in weeks, Tara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that trust could be rebuilt. Hope that love could survive suspicion. Hope that she and Jason could navigate the delicate balance of friendship and intimacy without losing themselves or each other. Tara thought she had found clarity. She thought that after the confrontation, after the hard truths and quiet admissions, she could finally breathe. But life, as she was learning, had a way of testing the ground just when she thought it was stable. The next week brought a subtle shift, almost imperceptible at first. Small things that should have gone unnoticed, but didn't, little fractures appearing in the calm she had fought so hard to build. It began with texts. Jason's phone buzzed in the evenings when he was supposed to be working late, brief messages from Lila that he read and replied to with a casual ease that made Tara's chest tighten. She tried not to overthink it, tried to remind herself of his words. She's just a friend. You're the one I love. But each buzz felt like a quiet dagger, each reply a reminder of the intimacy she could not touch. Then came the invitations. Social gatherings, dinners, work events, places where Tara and Jason were supposed to go together. But Lila's name appeared as if by invisible design. She invited herself politely, smiling, joking, blending effortlessly into the spaces that had once been Tara's domain. The first time it happened, Tara forced herself to stay composed, reminding herself she had confronted both of them, reminded herself she had clarity. But by the third time, by the fifth, the frustration she had buried deep began to bubble, surfacing as sharp glances and barely contained sighs. One evening, it all came to a head. Jason had promised a quiet night in, a chance for them to reconnect after the week's subtle invasions, and Tara had counted down the hours until she could be alone with him, reclaiming the intimacy she feared she had lost. But as soon as they stepped into the apartment, Tara knew something was off. Lila was there, unexpectedly again, chatting lightly with Jason in the living room, laughing in a way that should have been harmless but felt like an intrusion, a claim. "Tara," Lila called brightly, turning as if her presence was perfectly natural, perfectly expected. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Tara froze, her hands gripping her bag so tightly it crumpled. She forced a smile, stepping inside, her heart pounding. "Not at all," she said carefully, voice controlled, though her chest felt tight with anger and fear. Jason looked torn. He stepped toward Tara, reaching for her hand, but she didn't let him touch her. "I didn't expect Lila," he said quickly, glancing at the other girl. "She said she was just stopping by. It's fine if you want her to leave." Tara's jaw tightened. "Yes," she said firmly. "I want her to leave." Lila raised an eyebrow, but didn't move. Instead, she laughed softly, a sound that grated against Tara's nerves. "I just want to drop by. I didn't realize it would be such a problem." The words were calm, polite, almost innocent, but the undertone was unmistakable. Lila knew the effect she had on Tara, and she wasn't going to apologize for it. Tara felt a flash of anger and fear that made her hand shake. She realized then that this wasn't just about Jason or Lila. It was about control, about boundaries, about the quiet ways people could shift the balance of a relationship without overt betrayal. "I think it's better if you leave," Tara said again, more firmly this time. "I need tonight to be just ours." Jason looked at her, conflicted. "Tara, no," she interrupted, voice sharp. "I've asked. Please respect that." Lila's smile didn't falter. Instead, it widened just enough to make Tara feel the sting of subtle triumph. "All right, if you insist," she said lightly, rising gracefully. "I'll let you two have your evening. But just know, Tara, that this tension between us, it doesn't have to be this way." Her words hung in the air long after she left, an invisible echo that wrapped around Tara's chest like a vice. Jason turned to her, voice soft. "I didn't plan this. I didn't want her here to upset you." "I know," Tara said quietly, sinking onto the couch, heart still racing. "But it's not just about planning, Jason. It's about understanding, about boundaries, about knowing when a friend crosses the line between friendship and intrusion." Jason knelt beside her, taking her hands gently. "I understand, Tara. I really do. And I promise I'll make it right. I'll make sure you never feel like this again." But Tara couldn't fully relax. The tension wasn't just about Lila showing up. It was about the pattern, the subtle repetition that made her question not just Jason's actions, but the strength of their relationship. She realized she couldn't ignore the feelings of inadequacy, the jealousy that gnawed quietly beneath the surface. Over the next few days, Tara observed, tested, and reflected. She watched Jason closely, noting every smile, every word, every subtle movement. She didn't snoop. She refused to become the person she feared, but she couldn't deny the sharp pangs of insecurity that flared whenever Lila's presence loomed nearby. One afternoon, Tara had a breakthrough. She realized that her anger wasn't only about Lila or Jason. It was about her own fear of losing control, of being replaced, of not being enough. And with that realization came clarity. She had a choice. She could continue to let fear and jealousy dictate her actions, or she could reclaim her power, her confidence, her trust. That evening, she confronted Jason differently. She didn't accuse, didn't demand. Instead, she spoke calmly, directly, with a resolve that surprised even her. "Jason, I realized something," she began. "This tension, this fear I feel, it's mine to control. I can't let it dictate how I feel about you, how I act around Lila. But I also need boundaries. I need reassurance. Not because I doubt you, but because I need to feel secure in what we share." Jason nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I get it," he said softly. "I'll do whatever it takes to make you feel secure. I love you, Tara. Nothing will change that." Tara felt a weight lift slightly from her shoulders. It wasn't complete relief, not yet, but it was a beginning. She understood that love wasn't just about passion or romance. It was about communication, trust, boundaries, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths without letting them destroy what mattered most. That night, when she went to bed, Tara felt a quiet determination. The tests weren't over. Lila's presence, the subtle provocations, the patterns of closeness, they hadn't disappeared. But Tara now understood something vital. She wasn't powerless. She had a voice, a choice, a way to reclaim her place, her love, and her peace of mind. And somewhere deep down, beneath the fear and anger, Tara felt a spark of confidence, an unspoken promise to herself that she would not let doubt or jealousy dictate the course of her life. She would fight for her love, not through suspicion or confrontation alone, but through strength, clarity, and trust. The storm wasn't gone. It hadn't even passed. But Tara was no longer a passive observer. She was ready. The days following Tara's self-realization were tense, but controlled. She approached Jason differently, no longer letting fear dictate her every glance or word. She held her own space, spoke her truth calmly, and measured her actions with intention. But even as she worked to reclaim herself, the undercurrent of unease never fully disappeared. Lila's presence lingered like a shadow, quiet yet undeniable, and Tara knew that the battle was far from over. It all escalated one Friday evening. Jason had invited Tara to a casual dinner at his favorite downtown spot. The restaurant was dimly lit, a subtle hum of conversation and clinking glasses surrounding them. Tara was trying to focus on the moment, to enjoy the rare space where it was just her and him. But the quiet tension of the past weeks weighed heavily, a constant reminder of what could still unravel. They had just ordered their meals when Jason's phone buzzed. He glanced at it quickly, and Tara's eyes immediately followed. The message preview made her stomach drop. "See you in an hour?" "Lila." Tara froze, her hand tightening around the menu. She didn't know whether to confront him in the restaurant, to storm out, or to wait and observe. Every instinct in her screamed, but she forced herself to breathe, to stay composed. She looked up at Jason, his calm demeanor making her pulse quicken. "I'll be right back," he said softly, standing. His tone was casual, but Tara knew he was aware of her watching. Alone at the table, Tara's mind raced. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, she knew she couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. Her heart was a tight knot of fear, suspicion, and a lingering ache of past frustrations. Jason returned sooner than expected, his expression guarded. "I need to explain," he began before Tara could say anything. She braced herself. "Go ahead," she said quietly, her voice controlled despite the storm inside her. Jason hesitated. "I wasn't planning to tell you, but Lila asked me to meet her. She said she needed advice, and I promised I'd help. That's all it is, Tara. Nothing more." Tara felt a flicker of relief, quickly overshadowed by the sting of insecurity. At this point, Jason, "I don't even know what to believe," she said softly, her eyes searching his. "I want to trust you. I want to believe you. But it's so hard when it feels like she's always around, always involved, always part of what's mine." Jason reached for her hand, but this time, she didn't pull away. Instead, she let him hold it, feeling the warmth, the grounding presence. I get it, he said, his voice low, steady. And I'll do whatever it takes. I love you, Tara. You need to know that more than anything else. Dinner passed in tense silence, punctuated by polite conversation. But the unease lingered. Tara couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was shifting, a hidden tension waiting to erupt. And erupt it did. The next morning, Tara's phone buzzed with a text that made her blood run cold. Jason and I need to talk. Can you meet me? Lila. Her heart pounded as she read the message over and over. She felt betrayal before it had even happened. How long had Lila been planning this? How long had Jason known? The questions spun in her mind, creating a storm she couldn't control. Tara confronted Jason immediately. What is this? She demanded, her voice trembling. Why does she need to talk to you? What is happening that I don't know about? Jason's expression softened, but held an edge of frustration. Tara, it's not what you think. She's just asking for advice. That's all. Please, trust me. Trust you. Tara's voice rose, emotion breaking through the calm she had worked so hard to maintain. How can I trust you when everything we've talked about, every boundary, every promise, you seem to disregard? She's pushing Jason. She's testing. She's intruding. And I feel like I'm losing you to her before anything even happens. Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. Tara, I don't want to lose you ever. Lila's presence doesn't change what I feel. But you have to understand, it's complicated. We've known each other a long time, and sometimes she needs support. I promise, nothing else is happening. But Tara couldn't breathe. The reassurance, though honest, didn't reach her fractured sense of security. The fear of losing him, the fear of being replaced, and the tension of weeks of emotional testing had built to an unbearable pressure. She needed proof. Not of Jason's love, not of Lila's intentions, but proof of her own strength. Proof that she could confront the reality without collapsing under doubt. That afternoon, she followed Lila, carefully, silently, tracking her to a small cafe across town. The sight she saw made her heart stop. Lila was laughing, close to Jason, their heads nearly touching as they whispered. Tara's chest twisted with a mixture of fury and despair. She knew it was innocent, or at least meant to be, but to her, it felt like a betrayal so deep it cut through everything she had held as truth. Tears blurred her vision as she turned and walked away, refusing to confront Jason in that moment, knowing that the fight had to be measured, controlled, or it would destroy everything. The betrayal was real in her perception, even if it wasn't real in fact, and she felt powerless, trapped between love and fear. That night, she confronted him at home. I saw you, she said quietly, voice trembling. I saw you with her. And I can't keep pretending this doesn't hurt me. It's too much, Jason. It's too much, and I feel like I'm losing you to her. Jason took her hands in his, holding them tightly. Tara, look at me, he said, voice soft but commanding. I'm here. I'm yours. I've never loved anyone the way I love you. Lila is just a friend. I can see how this looks, but it's nothing more than that. You have to trust me. You have to trust us. For the first time, Tara allowed herself to pause, to breathe, to consider. The fear was still there, a heavy weight pressing down, but beneath it, a spark of determination began to flicker. She understood now that the fight wasn't against Jason or Lila. It was against the insecurity and fear inside her. If she let that control her, she would lose everything she truly loved. That night, as they held each other close, Tara made a silent promise. She would not let fear dictate her love. She would confront it, face it, and navigate it with clarity, strength, and honesty. And she would make sure Jason knew that while trust had to be earned, love could be strengthened with courage, not doubt. The week following Tara's confrontation with Jason and her quiet realization at the cafe was unbearable. The apartment, which should have been a sanctuary, felt like a cage filled with tension and unspoken words. Every glance between Jason and Tara carried the weight of what had been seen, what had been feared, and what had yet to be said. Lila's presence, though not constant, hovered like a storm cloud ready to break, subtle but undeniable, her influence pressing against Tara's fragile peace. Tara knew she couldn't continue like this. She had tried patience, observation, and calm reasoning, but each attempt only highlighted the complexity of their intertwined lives. Something had to give, and it was clear it would have to start with confrontation, not just of Jason and Lila, but of the feeling she had buried within herself for weeks. Jealousy, fear, and a desperate need to claim her place without doubt. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Jason had invited her to a small gathering at a mutual friend's loft, a casual evening, supposedly low-key. Tara agreed, seeing it as a chance to test the waters, to observe the dynamics in a controlled environment, to see Jason and Lila interact without interference. But the moment they arrived, the tension surged. Lila was already there, effortlessly charming, her laugh carrying across the room like a note that resonated painfully in Tara's chest. Tara felt her pulse quicken, a mixture of anxiety and determination coursing through her. She wasn't going to retreat this time. She would face what she feared, claim her ground, and demand clarity once and for all. The first hour passed in polite conversation, the kind that hid sharp glances and measured words. Tara noted every movement. The way Lila leaned closer to Jason when he spoke, the subtle brush of her hand against his arm, the way their laughter overlapped. It was like observing a scene from the outside, every detail magnified, every gesture loaded with unspoken meaning. Finally, Tara could no longer hold back. She approached Lila directly, her voice low but firm. "We need to talk." Lila looked up, surprised but calm, her smile unwavering. "Oh, about what?" "About this," Tara said, gesturing to the space between them, the closeness she had observed for weeks. "About the way you interact with him. About boundaries. About respect." Lila's eyes flickered for a moment, a hint of calculation passing through her otherwise serene expression. "Tara, I don't know why this is such a problem. Jason and I are friends. That's all. Friends." Tara's voice rose slightly, controlled yet sharp. "Friends don't lean in like this. Friends don't share the laughter that used to be mine. Friends don't occupy space in ways that feel like they belong to you." Jason, sensing the rising tension, came over, placing a tentative hand on Tara's shoulder. "Tara, please. This isn't what you think." But Tara pulled away, refusing to be calmed. "It's exactly what I think," she said firmly. "I've watched, I've felt, I've worried, and I will not pretend it's nothing anymore. You've crossed lines, Lila, and it stops now." The room went quiet, the energy between the three of them charged with an almost tangible force. Lila tilted her head, her smile slightly tighter now. "Tara, I'm not trying to take him. I don't want him. You need to see that. But you've made it very clear that you don't trust me, or him. And why would I trust you?" Tara shot back. "Because you smile? Because you pretend to be innocent? No. Trust has to be earned, and you've tested it every chance you get." Jason's hands were on her shoulders now, firm but gentle. "Tara, enough. Look at me. You're the one I love. You're the one I chose. Lila is a friend, yes, but that's all she is. Nothing else has ever happened, and nothing else will." Tara's chest heaved with emotion. She wanted to believe him desperately, but the fear, the weeks of subtle intrusion, had built walls inside her that couldn't fall overnight. She looked at Lila, who remained calm, poised, almost untouchable, and she realized something crucial. The threat wasn't Jason or Lila. It was the fear that had grown inside her, the doubt that had taken root, making her feel powerless. "I don't want apologies," Tara said finally, voice steady now. "I want boundaries. I want respect. And I want honesty. If that's not possible, then maybe you need to step away, just for a while, to find clarity." The words hit the room like a stone dropped into water. Jason's face fell slightly, but there was understanding there. Lila's smile dimmed, her expression unreadable. "Understand," Lila said softly. "I truly do. I don't want to hurt you. I never intended to." Tara nodded, feeling a small spark of control return. "Intentions aren't enough. Actions matter. And right now, I need to feel safe in my relationship, not anxious every time you're near him." The night ended with a fragile truce, the tension still present but acknowledged. Tara and Jason left the gathering hand in hand, her heart still heavy but her mind clearer. For the first time, she realized that confrontation didn't have to destroy love. It could rebuild it, provided boundaries were set and respect was enforced. The next days were a delicate balance. Tara kept her distance from Lila, observing interactions without panic, engaging only when necessary, and reclaiming the space that had been overshadowed for so long. Jason, in turn, was attentive, patient, and consistently reassuring, not with empty words, but through gestures, time, and attention. Then came the turning point. Jason surprised Tara one evening with a quiet dinner at home, no distractions, no interruptions. As they sat across from each other, candlelight flickering softly, Jason reached for her hand. "Tara," he said, voice low and sincere, "I know the past weeks have been hard. I know my friendship with Lila has caused tension, but I want you to know this. You are my choice, my partner, my future, and I will do everything in my power to make sure you feel that every day." Tara's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of fear or frustration. They were tears of release, of understanding, of love renewed. She squeezed his hand tightly. "Jason, I need trust. I need reassurance. And I promise I will work on my fears too. But I need to know you will respect my boundaries." "I do," he said firmly. "I promise." For the first time in weeks, Tara felt a calm settle in her chest. The battle wasn't over. The patterns of jealousy, fear, and insecurity would always lurk, but she had faced it head-on. She had confronted Lila, confronted Jason, and most importantly, confronted herself. She had claimed her space, her voice, her right to love without fear. As they ate in silence, the city lights glimmering through the window, Tara realized that this was the turning point. The confrontation had clarified everything. Love required honesty, boundaries, and courage. Fear could be fought. Doubt could be addressed. And most importantly, trust could be rebuilt when both hearts chose to honor it. The storm hadn't passed completely, but Tara now felt prepared. She knew that challenges would come, that Lila's presence and subtle provocations might continue, but she had discovered something far more powerful than fear: the strength to confront, the clarity to understand, and the courage to hold onto love even when it was tested. The weeks after the confrontation at the gathering were transformative. Tara felt a shift inside herself, a quiet strength that had been buried beneath weeks of doubt, fear, and jealousy. She wasn't naive. She knew challenges could arise, that Lila's presence would continue to test boundaries, that moments of insecurity might flare up unexpectedly. But she had reclaimed her agency, her voice, and most importantly, her sense of self within the relationship. Jason, too, had changed. The awareness of Tara's struggles had sparked a shift in him, a deliberate effort to prioritize clarity, transparency, and attention. He checked in more frequently, communicated openly about work, friends, and schedules, and, most crucially, he respected the boundaries Tara had set with Lila. Slowly, the tension that had once defined their home dissipated, replaced by a cautious but growing sense of trust. It was on a quiet Saturday afternoon that the final test arrived, not through words, not through confrontation, but through circumstance. Tara had agreed to attend a brunch with Jason and Lila, a neutral, public setting where she could observe without pressure. She felt the familiar flutter of anxiety as they approached the restaurant, but she reminded herself of the lessons she had learned: trust, boundaries, and strength. Lila arrived first, cheerful and calm, carrying a bouquet of flowers for the host. Tara watched her carefully, but didn't flinch. She greeted her politely, her tone measured and confident. "Hi, Lila," she said, offering a smile that was friendly but firm. "Hi, Tara," Lila replied, her smile warm but non-intrusive. "I'm glad we're doing this. I want things to be easy." Tara nodded, appreciating the honesty. She realized that Lila's role in her life didn't have to be destructive. It was how she perceived it, how she reacted, and how boundaries were respected that made the difference. Jason arrived shortly after, smiling when he saw Tara. "Ready?" he asked, taking her hand. "Yes," she said softly, squeezing his hand in return. The brunch passed without incident. Conversations flowed naturally, laughter shared evenly, and for the first time, Tara felt a sense of ease in Lila's presence. She observed, yes, but without fear. She engaged directly, maintained her composure, and, more importantly, she allowed herself to trust Jason openly, without the gnawing tension that had plagued her for weeks. After brunch, as they walked to the car, Tara felt a rush of gratitude and love. "Jason," she said quietly, her voice steady, "thank you. For being patient, for listening, for understanding me. I know it hasn't been easy, but I feel like we've really moved forward." Jason stopped, turning to face her fully. His hands rested gently on her shoulders. "Tara, you've been incredible," he said earnestly. "You've faced your fears, communicated openly, and trusted me even when it was hard. That's not easy, and it means more than I can say. I promise you, we'll keep building this together." Tara smiled, feeling the weight of weeks lift from her chest. "Together," she echoed. That night, back at the apartment, they celebrated quietly. Dinner was simple, the lights dim, the city outside a soft blur. Jason poured them both glasses of wine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Tara felt truly at peace. She realized that love wasn't just about passion or romance. It was about trust, boundaries, communication, and resilience. It was about facing fears, confronting doubts, and choosing each other repeatedly, even when the path was difficult. Later, as they sat on the couch, Jason wrapping an arm around her, Tara reflected on the journey. The confrontation with Lila had been necessary, but more important had been the confrontation with herself. She had faced the jealousy and insecurity that had threatened to consume her, and she had emerged stronger, more confident, more grounded. "I've learned a lot," Tara said softly, leaning into him. "About fear, about trust, about myself. And I want you to know that I'm committed, not just to us, but to facing challenges openly, to communicating, to growing." Jason kissed her forehead gently. "I know," he said, voice tender. "And I'm committed too. To us, to trust, to building something real and strong. We've faced storms, Tara, but I believe we can weather anything together." Days turned into weeks, and the new balance they had found solidified. Lila's visits became less frequent, more respectful of boundaries, and Tara learned to navigate their interactions without fear. She discovered that strength wasn't about controlling others, but about controlling herself, her reactions, her trust, her choices. One evening, while cooking dinner together, Jason looked at Tara with a mischievous smile. "You know," he said, "I think we've grown stronger because of everything that happened. Not despite it, but because we faced it together." Tara laughed softly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "I never thought confrontation could feel empowering," she admitted. "But you're right. We've both grown in ways I didn't expect." Jason pulled her into a hug, holding her close. "I love you, Tara. I choose you. Every day. And I love you," she whispered, her heart full. "And I choose you too. Every day." Weeks later, as the three of them, Tara, Jason, and even Lila, met for a group dinner at a neutral spot, Tara noticed something remarkable. The tension that had once been palpable was gone. Lila smiled, polite and friendly, but her presence no longer carried the weight of threat. Tara realized that she had conquered the part of the storm she could control. Her own fear, her own jealousy, her own insecurity. She had claimed her love without diminishing anyone else, and in doing so, she had found peace. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been tears, confrontation, and nights of doubt that felt endless. But through it all, Tara had learned a vital truth. Love isn't just about passion or closeness. It's about courage, communication, and trust. It's about facing challenges openly and choosing each other again and again, even when the path is uncertain. That night, as Tara and Jason walked home under the city lights, their hands intertwined, Tara felt the tension of the past weeks dissolve into a quiet, steady calm. The fear was no longer a force in her life. It had been acknowledged, faced, and conquered. She looked at Jason, seeing not just the man she loved, but the partner who had stood by her, understood her, and chosen her, fully and without hesitation. "I think we're finally okay," she said softly. Jason smiled, squeezing her hand. "More than okay," he said. "We're stronger." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Tara believed it completely. The storm had passed, not because it never existed, but because they had faced it together and come out stronger, wiser, and more certain of the love that bound them. In the end, Tara realized that love was not about fear or control, not about testing or doubt. Love was about courage, honesty, resilience, and a willingness to confront challenges head-on. It was about choosing each other every day, even when life tested them in ways they couldn't anticipate. And for Tara and Jason, that choice had become their greatest triumph, a foundation that would carry them forward unshaken, unbroken, and deeply, irreversibly connected.